I'm a member of the Mi'kmaq Warrior Society, and I believe it is important for me to say what led me to become a warrior in the first place. And what it was for me was, at first I was out to have a fight because of the way the government was treating us. But when I had my son 3 years ago, that's when it became real. Because I was oppressed too. I was behind these invisible bars too within the reservations. And to me, the reservations are infamous. And the things that go on within the community, I cannot speak for BC, but I can speak for the Mi'kmaq people, because I'm not really too familiar with BC. And I know back home we are suffering, the reserves are suffering from, what was it called? Hold on, there's a word for it. It's a form of trauma that's caused from so many years of oppression and genocide against the people. Prehistoric trauma. That's it. And now we got a people that have no culture, their culture was ripped from them. Their language was ripped from them. My grandmother, when she went to go speak her language, she would get beaten. And I heard a story of an elder in the community that when she spoke Mi'kmaq, she was beaten. They would put her in the hole. And the hole, she explained the hole to me in the residential school, was a little space underneath the steps. And there was no light. There was no access to toilets. It was dark. She said it was dark and cold for speaking Mi'kmaq. And after she was punished, she was taken to the hole, and the priest would rape her. And she would remain in the hole till the priest was sure that she was not going to repeat what happened. And she passed that same thing on to her son. And she passed that, the only way she knew how to love was through the residential school. And she passed it on to her son. And her son did the same thing. Was the only way he knew how, was the way his mother taught him because of the residential school. So now my best friend is a second-generation residential school survivor, and now he suffers from addiction and he suffers from suicide. He wants to kill himself all the time. First time I was like, this guy's a nut, he's crazy. But I look back now, and what was inflicted on his grandmother, it was a cycle. He wants to kill himself because of what the residential schools did to his grandmother. This was the country of I shouldn't say the country of Canada, I should say the leaders of Canada that decided this was their best way. And they assimilated us, they took our language from us, and what do you got left? When the residential schools were over, this wasn't very long ago, it's so recent in history that many of the residential school survivors are alive today. And it's because of the residential schools, it's because of the scalping proclamation and all these that have left my people in shambles. My people are left with no culture, and it's slowly just starting to kick back. That's why we have addiction, that's why we have high numbers of suicide, we have high numbers of people fighting each other, people on drugs, and it's dysfunctional. The Mi'kmaq people aren't dysfunctional. This is the way that the government taught us. And for me, in my belief, the government can't be trusted. They proved over 500 years that this is not, they're not going, it's been quiet since the residential schools, but maybe we're going to look back 20 years from now, and we're going to say, oh my God, is that what they did in 2000? Is that what they really did? Is that how they treated you guys? So, in my opinion, the reserve is a big residential school. We're still living the same way as residential school. And that is why I act out. I suffered 10 years of addiction. I went back and forth to jail. I went to detoxes. I've been to rehabs. I've been to the nut house. And I told the judge, I said, one day I told the judge, I said, I started doing time when I was 6 years old. He looked at me and said, are you crazy? This is Canada. Nobody does time when they're 6 years old. So I told the judge, I said, Your Honor, I started doing time with my mother when I was 6 years old in the transition house. And that was throughout my life. And it got quiet maybe when I was 13, but that only lasted 7 years. As soon as I turned 18, I was right back into the institutions. I was right back into the jails. I was suffering from addiction. I wanted to commit suicide, and every day I would pray to the Creator that He's going to make sure I don't wake up. And I would go back and forth to these jails. And the judge would tell me over and over, you're an evil man, Coady, you shouldn't do this to your community, you should be ashamed of yourself. Little did I know, I believed the judge. I said, man, I really am an evil man. So I believed for that 10 years I was an evil man. And little did I know it was because of this country that I wrote on an article I did with a friend of mine, and I wrote, I am a product, over 500 years of genocide and oppression, I am a product of what this country has created. And here I am. And I think about it now, okay, I'm here. I survived. I went back in 2007 when I went to jail. This was just in one block. I did time with 23 Mi'kmaq inmates. Just in one block. This is the same block as me. Out of that 23 inmates, 11 are dead today. 10 from suicide, 1 from overdose. So that gives me a 50% chance. 50-50 chance that I'm going to do the same. I'm not going to do the same because I'm putting my foot down. I don't want my son to go to jail. I don't want my son to go to transition house with his mother. I don't want to have to give my son advice how he's going to overcome a friend's suicide. How do you comfort a child that his best friend just killed himself? And for me, I've seen it over and over. And my problem was when I seen it, and I knew it was right next to me, I would go look at the body all the time. If I knew it was there, I would look at it. That was my way of closure. And I would see my friends hanging there. That is difficult. But I survived. I'm still here. And I got through it. But I think about my son. When my son was born 3 years ago, it changed. That's when my fight was real. That's when I said, no way, the government's not going to do that to my son. No way. And I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm going to do that the same for everyone's children. I'm going to do that for my nieces and nephews. Because right now, the social conditions we are living in First Nations are horrible. They're horrible conditions. And the way I grew up was, my mom, God bless her, she raised 5 of us on her own. She did it. She didn't abuse us. She didn't abuse alcohol or drug. Maybe she didn't to start, but she raised us all on her own, running from my father, the guy that was supposed to protect me. And my mother was running from him. And here we were. I have these memories of incidents when that happened. And for years, I was mad at my dad. I said, Dad, man, I can never forgive him. I said, I will never forgive him for what he put me through. And I didn't. For 10 years. It was till my son was born, I learned I had to forgive him. It was not his fault. He was just the same evil man as I was when the judge was telling me I was the evil man. He was that same evil man. But he really wasn't his fault. That was the way his mother taught him. And his mother went to the residential school. And he got, I don't know what happened, but he turned out passing that on. And here I am, I want to break that cycle in my son. And that's why it's so important to me. As I'm not a warrior to be a rebel or a thug. I'm a warrior because I have no choice. I think about my son. I have to protect. It's different. Like when you have your son, and I look at my son in my hand, and I look at him in the face. He speaks little Mi'kmaq, but he can't really understand. He doesn't know what's going on, and that breaks my heart. He's going into a world that's so crazy. And there's no end in sight. And I believe I have to. It's vital for my son that he doesn't grow up like I did, that I have to stand up. And that's why I became a warrior. And I have 2 children. I have a daughter, she's 7, and my son is 3 years old. My daughter I didn't see very much because me and her mother don't get along very well. But when I had the opportunity to raise my son, that was different. It was such amazing. That's when I became a man. Really, I became a man the first time I went to jail when I was 18, because I was like, I want my mom. The first thing was my mom. She couldn't get me out of that jail cell. I was 18 years old. I was an adult. There was no way. The first thing I said, my mom. And I cried to my mom. I said, Mom, help me. And my poor mom, she broke down. And after a while, I'm like, oh, my poor mom's going to be stressed out. And here I am. Mom, don't worry about me. I'm okay. And it never stopped. It stopped for a bit, maybe through my son's upbringing. And now is the fight with the water. If the water's poisoned, the animals, the moose, the fish, the gardens can't flourish. They're poisoned. Everything is dead. And what happens if the government magically decides once again to stop helping us, to leave us on our own? What are we going to do when we don't got no moose? What are we going to do when we got no salmon? Or we can't? We're screwed. And that's why it's so important, because I cannot always depend on the government to make right decisions. And they prove themselves over and over and over again that they won't make those decisions. So it is important for me to fight for the water so that that's there just in case they decide to stop helping us. My son will he'll have the opportunity to hunt like I did. He'll have the opportunity to fish like I did. And that's why I was a warrior. And when I went over that 10 years of my incarceration through institutional oppression, I had no pride. I was a Mi'kmaq. I was born Mi'kmaq, I was brown, I was a Mi'kmaq, but I wasn't a Mi'kmaq in here. I didn't have my tradition. I had my language, but I wasn't really a Mi'kmaq. I was ashamed to be Mi'kmaq. I was like, man, there's so much stuff going on. I don't want to be Mi'kmaq. I'd rather grow up white. And people say, oh, you're lucky. You're native. You get a house, tax-free stuff. If I was non-native, I strongly believe I would have my own house. I would have paid for it, but I would have my own house, and I would have my own vehicle and stuff. But no, I'm a prisoner in my own territory. I'm a prisoner in my own reserve. And that goes the same for everybody. My opinion, you got 3 classes. You got your high class natives, you got your middle class, and you got your poverty. And the ones that are living in poverty, they're living in poverty. And that means drug abuse, that means, the First Nation people are resilient, they're smart people. They have social structures that were the bomb, and they flourish. That can come back. But it's up to people like the warriors or I don't know more to stick up for our kids, to give them the best chance possible. Because if we sit down and do nothing right now, they got nothing. They got nothing. And they're going to live in the same conditions. I don't want to teach my son how he's going to cook bills. I don't want to teach my son about how to overcome debts and stuff. I want to try to teach my son a different path in life. I had the privilege when I went to Elsipogtog that I had the privilege to get back in touch with my culture. When I left Elsipogtog, I said either I go to Escazoni or I keep going this way to Elsipogtog. And it's about a 6-hour difference. So Escazoni is like a half-hour drive, Elsipogtog 6-hour drive. I said, right now I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to Elsipogtog. So I went. I didn't know anybody up there. The only one I knew was Sue. So I went up. I was there not even 5 minutes. I was there just in time. We went up to the mountain and we went to go confront the RCMP. And after that, we stayed in the woods. We were taught about respect. We were taught about tradition. The people in Big Cove in New Brunswick have a lot more tradition than the people in Nova Scotia. There's not much tradition in Nova Scotia, but the people in New Brunswick, they really believe in that. And there's so many people that have that chance to get traditional healing. And they showed me the way that I too can get traditional healing. And I would take the women to do drumming in the woods, and they needed someone to go alone. Like, they didn't want to go alone, so I went with them. I walked with them through the woods. They were drumming. They were good drummers, so I didn't mind. Plus, they got me from all the other so I went through the woods and did all that with them. It was amazing. There was a point where it was pitch black, and they said, to them, when they drummed, it was a prayer. It was not just a song, it was a prayer. They were praying to the Creator through their song. And the first time I thought, I was like, yeah, I just believed them. But one day they showed me this prayer song. They said it was very powerful. So I went there and I went to the prayer song they did. It was about 6 of them. And no word of a lie. When they were doing that, I seen like a light bulb, a couple of them going like this. And I believe it was spirits. I never believed in that, but that day I seen them. Either that or it was the cops with their night fishing goggles. But I'm getting off track here. I want to talk about my experience in Elsipogtog. They gave me the opportunity to learn my tradition, and I felt pride I never felt over that 10 years of me. I had a wonderful upbringing to a certain point, and through all this 10 years of institutionalization, that pride was gone. I didn't feel good about myself. I was lost. But when I went to Big Cove, it was that tradition and all summer they did that. Tradition, it was amazing, right? So we had time when we had 500 people walking up. The women were drumming and we were following. That was so amazing when you got 500 people walking this way and they're drumming and they're all for the same cause. That's the most amazing thing you'll ever see. Then we did that all summer. And I felt so much pride. I was preaching tradition. I thought I was traditional until I went to Big Cove and I really learned what tradition was. Till they decided they were going to raid us. That put an end to everything. They arrested me, and when they arrested me, they took me to jail. And they said, okay, they were going to let some people go that night. They let a few people go, and then they said the rest are going to go to court and see if they can get released. So the few of them got released, but lo and behold, 6 of us were kept because of my 10 years of institutionalization. Because of this country, I didn't get bail. And the first 3 weeks, I was put in solitary confinement. It was horrible. I couldn't speak to my mom. I wanted to talk to my mom because the last thing she knew, everyone was getting shot. And I wasn't sure if she thought it was real bullets because the rumors back home that the cops were coming in and they're shooting everybody. And my poor mom, I wanted to call her just to let her know I'm okay. They wouldn't give me that opportunity. For 3 weeks, I didn't get one phone call. Not one. And I was kept in the hole. Every 2-3 days, I would get a strip search. Like the last group, I told them, I said, I get a strip search every 2 days, sometimes 3 days. And they strip search me for anything. And I was in solitary confinement. How are you supposed to bring in contraband when you're locked in there 23 hours a day? And they strip search you. In my opinion, the strip searches weren't a form of looking for contraband. The strip searches were a form of punishment. And if you want to punish someone, that's a good way to do it because it's a personal search. They get you to do everything. You gotta lift your testicles and you gotta spread your butt cheeks, and you can only do that for so long. Then my pride is gone. All that pride I had in the summer is gone. They took it from me from those repeated strip searches. And there was a time when they missed out on they lost a tray, those meal trays. What do? strip search for a tray. And finally, I wanted to get my pride back, and I wanted to pray. I wanted to smudge. I wanted to sing. I wanted to get some advice from an elder. I was not given that opportunity. I made about 6 official requests to the Department of Public Safety for traditional ceremonies to speak with an elder. Once they brought an elder, and that was when they my lawyer made a press conference, told them how they were treating us, and just so happens the next day they sent in an elder for us, and that was it. And we couldn't practice my religion, and they offered religion, but they only offered religion through the Holy Bible, and I prayed through smudging, and to me it felt like the only way I could pray was through the Holy Bible, and that's all they offered. The chaplain said, yeah, I'll see what I can do. Like, they were trying to push me out because they knew I was getting upset. And it worked, they pushed me out, but now when I got out, I told the boys, I want to tell them how you guys, it's a dark time in someone's life when they're in a jail. And to have that connection to spirituality, whether your spirituality is through the Holy Bible or through sage or whatever your spirituality is, you should have that connection. And they didn't offer that. By the time I got out, I had no pride left. I thought everything was done. I was like, man, I can't do this no more. I had no pride. It took me 3 weeks to get that pride back. And little by little it's coming back. Now they're in for it. now they piss me off. So I'm gonna try everything in my power to bring awareness to what's going on in the First Nations, because I believe it's really important that we educate people, because there's a lot of preconceived notions about First Nation people, and people think that we got it good. It's not. It's not good. It's good for the high class, but it's not good for the lower class. And now I'm getting that pride back, and here I am speaking in New Brunswick. I'm speaking to people. British Columbia. All these are my dreams coming true. Ever since Burn Church, I didn't get to go to Burn Church. I'm sure you guys might have heard about Burn Church. I didn't get to go. My mother wouldn't let me. I was 16. But after that, and when it was over, she kicked me out a month later. So I said, I'm a warrior now. I want to be a warrior. I want to keep fighting. And here I am today. I went to the fight in Elsipogtog, and it was amazing. I never seen people. We had Acadians coming together. We had Blacks coming together, we had English coming together, Mi'kmaq, we had people from different provinces all over the place for one goal, was to get rid of that oil company. And it worked to a certain extent, but they're still planning on coming in 2015. And I want to do everything in my power to stop that. And I'm sure Sue is too, and so are the other people. Everybody else, now I get to, you guys can only go by what you hear online about Big Core. But now you guys are getting firsthand of what actually happened. And my story is only a small story of what took place. There are many stories. Everyone has their own stories. You got women that are scared. When they went there, the cops were going with their machine guns and shooting. Like, they looked like militants. And they had their, like, they came over, they beat her up with an assault rifle. They hit her and they beat me up, and when I had a cigarette in my mouth, I was like this, and I had a cigarette in my mouth, they slammed me down right on the cigarette. And I went like that. I said, there's a cigarette. And I got charged for attempting to headbutt the officer. And when I said, oh, there's a cigarette, he put my head down, he would twist my head to try and butt that cigarette out. And I was like, ah! I said, I swore, I was like, ah! And I went like that, and I got resisting arrest. And plus they threw a bunch of ridiculous charges of forcible confinement, assault to a police officer. All that wasn't true. But here they were, they said, okay, you got your forcible confinement, you're looking at about 2.5 years in prison. But if you plead guilty to these small charges, we'll let you out today. That was on the 20th of December. I said, sure, I'll agree to it. I'll plead guilty. It was either that or a fight, and I wouldn't get a trial date till February. Then I would miss out on Christmas. My son would pick up the phone and he'd be like, hi, Dad! And he'll be talking away. And his mother would pick up the phone, no one's there. My poor son is pretending to talk to me. He's like, look, Dad, my doll, Mario. And he's like, peekaboo, peekaboo, and no one's on the phone. That broke my heart so much. And I can't keep doing that to my son. This is, I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to keep doing that to my son. I want the best for my son. And I want to make sure that happens. And I'm glad, thank everyone for listening to me, because I believe that my story should be heard. And my story might seem horrible, but there's even worse stories. There's worse stories on the reserve. There's people that lived way worse lives than me. And those poor children, I'm a descendant, I said I'm a descendant of the alcoholic era, when people were alcoholics on the reserve. And I'm a descendant of that. But now you got, there's an epidemic in my reserve back home with prescription drugs, painkillers, and everyone's doing that. Wait till you see the descendants of those here, of the prescription drugs. So I'm going to try everything in my power, not just for my kids, for Sue's kids, for her kids, for all of our kids. We can't let the government continue to do that. It's horrible. It's genocide happening in our own country against the original inhabitants of this country. We had a good social structure. We had our ways that we could feed our family. And it must be, I always think about this when back then, if I was a native before European contact, all I would have to do was do my dance and then get a woman, and she liked my dance, she'll come to me, and then I'll have a family. I'll make a family. I'll have my teepee. I'll make my teepee and I'll provide for my family through hunting or through fishing. Not through the welfare system, not through the food banks, not through none of that. It must have been amazing back then. But thank you everyone for listening to my speech, and I hope you guys let your guys' friends know too about what's going on, because it's horrible. Just pass it on. I always say if I can talk to one person and have that one person pass it on, then I would have accomplished what I wanted to do. But now this is the second group today I talked to. All my dreams are coming true. I had dreams about, I always looked up to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, for what he did for their people. And I believe we're lagging. We're behind. It's time we catch up. It's time we do the same thing too. It's time we have our movement. And we're at the forefront of a movement that's going to change the way Canada. Now's the time. With Idle No More, we got Native Youth Movement, we got warrior societies from all different tribes. This is the time. Right now is the time that we all get together and say no more. Thank you, everyone. That's all I have to say.